Can you believe it? We're on the final chapter of The Deep End by Traci Hunter Abramson. We're going to find out what exactly happens and how this story ends. Let me know what you think is going to happen. I'm curious if you're right or wrong. No cheating. No, shall we begin? Chapter 26. The final chapter. CJ yelped with pain as Malloy yanked on her hair to force her down the stairs. Just as they reached the landing, she heard a gunshot outside. Her heart sank as she thought about Jill and the possibility of Matt and Doug arriving as well. Malloy let out a distorted laugh. Sounds like my associate located your friend. She gasped for air, guilt overwhelming her as she thought of Jill possibly being injured or worse. Because of her. Oh, I forgot another possibility, but I'll say it later. Maybe, if I remember to say it later. CJ's legs and arms felt like jelly, her body moving forward only because Malloy continued to drag her with him. A second gunshot sounded. Think, CJ, ordered herself. Help should have been here by now. Her eyes landed on the coat closet, and she knew that she had to at least try to get away. She might still be able to help whomever Malloy's thug was shooting at outside. I hid the diamonds in one of the guest rooms, CJ ventured, pointing down the hall. Malloy released her hair and gave her a shove into the hall in front of him. Which one? This one. CJ walked through the bedroom's open door ahead of him, in the back of the closet. Get them, he growled, making a point to train the gun on her. Do you think she's going to give him what he's looking for? Ooh. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I get a little eyelash that loves to poke me in my little eyeball. No fun. She pulled open the door and stepped into the closet. She squatted down, grateful that some of Matt's things cluttered the floor so she could give the appearance of searching. Edging deeper into the closet, CJ glanced back to see that Malloy was still standing near the middle of the bedroom. With a silent prayer and a rush of adrenaline, she reached up, wrapped her fingers around the doorknob of the adjoining closet, and burst out into the hallway. She sprinted toward the kitchen, with her eyes focused on the door leading to the garage. The shout behind her didn't slow her down, nor did the approaching footsteps. Then a gunshot echoed through the house and stopped her cold. Matt stepped forward and gripped the side of the boat with both hands as they turned the corner near his and CJ's house. No one had moved for a few seconds after they heard the gunshot through the radio. Then Doug had leaned over and increased the boat's speed himself, ignoring Butch's annoyed stare. I mean, can you blame the guy? It is his boat after all. But it is police matters too. Life or death. The house came into view even as Matt tried to focus on what they could do to save CJ and Jill. The dock near the house was in full view from the windows on the back of the house. Doug, they're going to see us coming. Doug nodded, which is why we're going to pull up to the dock next door. He pointed at the little dock that belonged to Matt's next door neighbor. Butch cut the boat's speed and turned the wheel to edge in where Doug had indicated. Do you want me to wait for you? Doug started to say no, but movement in the yard caught his eye. Before he could respond, Butch tied off the boat with a single line. With a nod of approval, Doug drew his weapon and turned Matt. I want you to stay here with Butch. You know better than that, Matt answered as another gunshot vibrated through the quiet neighborhood. Matt leaped from the boat and sprinted along the neighbor's yard toward his own. Doug sent Butch a look and ordered him to stay down before Doug jumped up to follow Matt. Both men slowed briefly to scale the wrought iron fence that separated the 2 yards. and before Doug could stop him, Matt headed straight across the open yard for the back door. Hearing movement behind him, Doug turned back toward the water. His jaw dropped when he saw Jill standing in the boat holding a gun with both hands. I was right. That's what I was remembering. In his surprise and relief, he didn't notice the movement in the bushes along the wall. Matt had only taken 6 or 7 steps when Jill shot across the yard to help ward off the threat that Doug and Matt had yet to see. Another gunshot sounded at the same time, but Matt never broke stride. Doug immediately switched back to cop mode and aimed his weapon toward the bushes. He squeezed off around to cover Matt, shouting at Jill to get down. She did not have to be told twice. CJ barely had time to blink as Malloy lunged toward her. She had dropped to the floor when a bullet splintered the garage door she had been attempting to open. Shaking, she tried to get to her feet underneath her so she could stand, but all she managed to do was to push herself along the floor until she was back up against the wall. Malloy reached down and squeezed one hand around her throat. "You stupid girl!" CJ grabbed his arm with both her hands and opened her mouth in an attempt to breathe. As his fingers squeezed tighter, her eyes grew huge with panic, her pulse racing. Suddenly, Malloy loosened his hold just enough for her to gasp for air. "Now, are you ready to cooperate?" CJ nodded emphatically, and Malloy released his grip on her throat. "The diamonds are here, in the kitchen." "Where?" "In one of the drawers." CJ slowly pulled herself up, her breathing quick and shallow. Fear consumed her. Fear for her life, fear for her husband and for her friends. The scene almost seemed unreal, as though she was watching a television show, a show about someone else. Still, a little dazed, CJ opened one drawer to find the diamonds weren't there. It was one of these over here. She slid open a second drawer and looked down at the bag of diamonds inside. "He's going to kill me," she thought now. "As soon as he sees them, he's going to kill me." He's a good boy. She didn't notice the sound at the door as she reached into the drawer. In a sudden move, she grabbed the bag of gems and hurled it at Malloy. Then sudden motion caught him off guard, giving CJ a chance to dart toward the door. Before she could reach it, Matt burst through it. He swung a baseball bat with all of his might, a look of utter fury on his face. The bat connected with Malloy's shoulder, knocking him forward as he cried out in pain. The diamonds dropped to the floor and Malloy's gun clattered onto the kitchen counter. Malloy reached for it, his fingers wrapping around the handle just as Matt dropped the baseball bat and grabbed him from behind. The gun tumbled out of sight onto one of the kitchen stools as Malloy twisted free and turned to face Matt. Malloy's eyes glinted with challenge, and he glanced at CJ, who was now trapped in the corner of the kitchen. He then looked back to Matt, apparently pleased that CJ couldn't get out of the kitchen without getting by him. "Even if you get past me, my friend outside isn't going to let you out of here alive." A burst of gunfire sounded, and Matt gave a satisfied nod toward the wall of windows overlooking the yard. Had any of them looked through the window, they would have seen Doug leaning over Malloy's accomplice to verify that he no longer had a pulse. "It sounds like your friend is having his own troubles." "Or yours are," Malloy retorted, right before lunging at Matt. Matt's head snapped back when Malloy's fist connected with his jaw, but Malloy didn't keep the upper hand for long. Matt managed a clear punch to Malloy's midsection, causing him to fall back against the kitchen counter. CJ looked down at the baseball bat on the floor, wondering if she could get to it as Malloy and Matt continued their fistfight. When Malloy fell to the floor, he grabbed the bat and held it out to keep Matt at bay. Realizing that Malloy was trying to get to the other side of the counter to retrieve his gun, CJ climbed onto the counter and then dropped onto one of the kitchen stools. Just then, Malloy took a swing at Matt with the bat, clearing the edge of the counter. CJ looked down on the floor, and when she couldn't see the gun there, she started looking on the stools. She saw the gun just as Malloy lunged for it. "Run, Matt!" CJ shouted. Malloy's hand grasped the gun, and he aimed it at CJ as she tried to scramble past him. A gunshot sounded. CJ screamed, and Malloy crumpled to the floor. CJ looked up to see Doug standing beside him. "Matt, are you okay?" CJ looked up to see Doug standing beside Matt. Are you okay? Matt asked breathlessly. Speechless, CJ started to cry as Matt moved forward and pulled her into his arms. Her whole body shook as Doug stepped onto Molly's hand, removed the gun, and checked for a pulse. Is he... CJ managed to ask, unaware of Jill running across the backyard toward the house. Doug nodded. Looking up as Jill opened the back door, she saw Doug immediately, then Matt holding CJ in his arms. Jill looked back at Doug before she spoke. What happened? I heard gunshots in here. Doug closed the distance between them and pulled Jill into his arms. He was still stunned that she had engaged in a gunfight with Malloy's accomplice after the man had tried to shoot her. Thankfully, he had hit the boat's radio instead. Doug didn't think he would ever be able to dislodge the image of her shooting at a trained killer. He took a deep breath before finding his voice. Everything's okay now. Still stunned, CJ motioned down at Malloy and then looked back up at Jill. He was going to kill us. It's over now, Matt soothed her, pulling her into the living room where she could no longer see Malloy's lifeless form. She looked up at him with a pale face as he reiterated the words. It's really over. Ooh, epilogue time. CJ watched the American flag rising as the first notes of the national anthem began to play. She felt the weight of the gold medal around her neck and watched the handheld flags waving in the stands. Tears burned the back of her eyes as emotions overwhelmed her. She tried to blink back the tears as Kristen Hart put an arm around her shoulder, uniting her with the rest of her team. This was the third time she had made it to the medal stand. The first had been when she won the silver in the 100-meter breaststroke. Then she had won the bronze in the 200-meter individual medley, surprising even herself. So, now she has gold, okay. The U.S. national anthem had played then too, since Kristen had won the gold, but it wasn't the same. This time, the music played for her, and the three teammates she had grown so close to over the past several days. Although they had not been the favorites going into the race, they had beaten some of the best swimmers in the world to capture the gold in the 4x100-meter medley relay. As with all the Olympic Games, stories about the athletes filtered to the public as media attention grew, especially stories about medal winners. The stories about CJ that appeared right after the trials had taken on a life of their own, and CJ quickly became one of the faces of the Summer Olympics. Her story had been told and retold so many times that she wondered if anyone didn't think of her as that girl from the Witness Protection Program. She thought of how much had happened in the past few years and the many detours in her road to the Olympics. Though she had only skimmed a few of the articles written about her, one had brought home a fact that she hadn't yet considered. Since Chase's death, 7 attempts had been made on her life, and 7 times she had survived. The reporter had called her lucky, but CJ knew it was more than that. She didn't know why the Lord had chosen to spare her life so many times. But now, listening to the national anthem, she could only hope to be worthy of the many blessings that had gotten her here. Throughout the past week, she had felt the support of her friends, her country, and at times even her father. When CJ had failed to reach the finals in the 200-meter breaststroke, her disappointment had been keen, not so much because of her own desire to succeed, but rather because she felt she had disappointed an entire country. Despite that failure, the support from her newfound fans never wavered. The stories about CJ's situation had struck a chord with the American public, and their interest in her continued despite her inability to make the medal stand in one of her best events. Now, new opportunities in her career abounded, but CJ already knew where her priorities would lie now. For too long, she had put her dreams and her father's dream of swimming in the Olympics in front of everything else. Now she knew it was time to let the fame fade away so that she could finally redefine her priorities with family at the top of the list. As the final notes of the Star-Spangled Banner rang out, CJ's eyes found Matt in the front row, a short distance away. As much as she didn't want this moment to end, she could hardly wait for the moments still to come. For the rest of her life, she'd be able to look back and remember this, the instant her Olympic dreams came true. As Matt's eyes met hers, she knew this was also just the beginning of many extraordinary days to come. That was a good ending. I like that. What do you guys think? Well, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Much love. Bye.